Hello and welcome to Wide Angle. West Asia in this kind of crisis, and we have two of the most distinguished observers of the scene. On my extreme right, Siddharth Varadarajan, former editor of The Hindu and now with Shiv Nadar University. And then, of course, Professor D Muni, who needs no introduction for discussants on issues of international affairs. Is an Islamic caliphate a possibility?
A theoretical one, or I presume within the concrete realities of the military situation in Iraq. I would say that the picture would become very clear in the next week or 10 days. My own inclination is to believe that the military challenge that the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, the ISIL group, the challenge that it poses to the Iraqi government is likely to be contested rather more vigorously by the Iraqi government in Baghdad and its allies, its friends. So I think that the answer to your question is it's not likely.
Siddharth is confining ISIS to Iraq. ISIS, as far as I can see it, is Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. We do not discuss Lebanon, and it's very interesting that no one mentions Lebanon, because if you discuss Lebanon in this context, you think of Hezbollah. And once you think of Hezbollah, you think of Israel. The focus is supposed to be kept between the United States of America and Iran, and somewhere in between this game is being played out. Professor Muni.
I even theoretically, I don't accept that this is a possibility. I'll tell you why. Because the strategic dimensions apart, the internal fault lines within Islam are too deep and too sharp. And secondly, even
too deep and too sharp for what?
Against each other. Internal fault lines within Islam are too deep and too sharp. And even in Iraq, the ISIS is, of course, leading the movement. But this is not the only group which is in command of the situation. There are Kurds, there are other groups, smaller ones, there are links of the ISIS with various other organizations. And I don't think that, you know, a united or a homogeneous seat of power can emerge out of this, no matter what happens.
Look, there is a fear, and the fear is coming actually from the Americans, believe it or not, because the American gallery itself is a little divided on this. The former ambassador to Iraq, Ryan Crocker, he has just written in newspapers that he believes that it is about to happen, and that United States, when getting in, does not estimate the effect it's going to have, and in fact disengaging and even more traumatic when it is not done after serious consideration. He's saying that, and re-engaging is the only way out, otherwise you have the outlines of a caliphate in that region.
No, I would say that if the US really intervenes in a forcible way, what you say may become a possibility. Because, you know, then all other contradictory forces may really join hands. I don't know for what various other reasons. The US at the moment appears to be very cautious in totally going into the situation, and great deal of mess is actually accounted to them. They are the one who are the origin and the source of the mess which is created. I mean, they created an army of how many? 900,000 people who just is crumbling. They themselves never knew how to fight insurgencies. How could they teach them? They have collapsed themselves in Afghanistan. So I think they have various other constraints in really getting deep into that.
Why then, if you are convinced by what Muni is saying, what do you think is happening in this drama?
Well, I think I mean, there's a theoretical point that I just want to pick up from what Muni Sahab said, that in terms of the question of is a caliphate a possibility, I answered from a military perspective, but the normative answer was supplied by Muni Sahab, and I just want to take that forward, that in any modern society, where I think a healthy polity is one that respects differences of opinion, one that respects differences of approach, and it is very clear that respect and tolerance for these differences has been part and parcel of Islamic history throughout, throughout the last millennia. Artificially trying to collapse those differences to say that my set of beliefs are superior, everybody else is a kafir. The takfiri tradition in unfortunately a section of modern Islam is what is creating this problem. And I think anybody in a country like Iraq, which has such tremendous diversity, anybody who tries to impose their notion of what a caliphate is going to come to grief. In terms of the geopolitics, I think the US dilemma, or I think the US game is unfolding in the following manner, that they clearly would like to confront the challenge that the ISIL poses or the ISIS poses to them. At the same time, they want to use this opportunity to bring about changes within the Iraqi government that they've been pushing for the last 5 or 6 years. It's no secret that they want Mr. Maliki out. They see Maliki as being too much in the Iranian camp. Can we use this crisis, therefore, this is the American reasoning, can we use this crisis to somehow weaken the Iranian hold over the Baghdad government, while at the same time accomplishing our military objectives vis-a-vis the ISIS? This is really what is informing what looks like a delay in the American response to the military situation in Iraq. So I think they, and the Iranians in a sense are playing this game equally skillfully by the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei has now come out against American military intervention in any form in Iraq. So I think that this geopolitics between these two big powers, Iran is big in the regional context, I think is also something that we have to take on board.
We are only talking about, you're right, I mean I'm not disputing what you're saying, but let us bring in other players also. Saudi Arabia, for instance, Turkey, for example, Egypt, for example. Egypt is not a player at the moment, is more sort of trying to find its own feet under General Sisi as president. But for the time being, let's keep Egypt out. Turkey and Saudi Arabia.
Well, that's very true. Iran,
yeah.
Saudi Arabia, and Turkey.
Right.
Now, this is the regional what you call triangle, which has not resolved and which is in deep competition with each other. Would not like to see any of the three components emerging victorious in the given situation, which further gets linked up with the social cleavages within the region. I mean, apparently people are talking about a sectarian crisis of Shia Sunni in one way, but it has a regional manifestations. And then local conditions, you said something about Maliki, but there is no denying the fact that Maliki alienated both the Kurds and the Sunnis in a way which was very foolish in a way, which is boomeranged on him. So you have the local conditions which are unsettled, you have the regional power struggle which is going on, and you have a deep schism in terms of sectarian conflict spreading all over the region. Syria involved in that sense, all over the region. Now, how do you sort it out under one caliphate? No way. I think there is no solution, in fact, looking...
No, the caliphate is whose solution? Caliphate is not, it's an urge. Caliphate is nobody's solution. Caliphate is an urge which has been created and generated by this reservoir of extremism which has been set boiling between Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. And mind you, Lebanon, for the time being, let's leave it aside. It is touching now Amman. The fear is that it is now touching Jordan.
Right. No, I think the the dimensions of the possibilities for this to spill over are enormous. But if we were to trace the origins, the recent origins of the ISIS offensive, two factors are inescapable. First, the conflict in Syria. And I would say the rather foolish approach of the United States in deciding to assist militarily the Syrian rebels, the rebels against the Assad regime, despite the known links that many of these rebels have to Al-Qaeda. So that's factor number one. The second, going beyond the Syrian battlefield, is, I suspect, the role of, as you said, the Saudis, Qataris, other regional powers that perhaps have encouraged the ISIS in this current phase. Again, I would say rather short-sightedly, because in pursuing one set of geopolitical goals, in the short term, you're essentially creating a situation which is going to unravel for the wider region, including yourself. And I think that this is something which the United States, in a way, acting militarily against the ISIS extremists who've taken Mosul, for example, represents only one part of the challenge. I think ensuring that all regional powers, particularly the Saudis, don't fish in troubled waters and don't, in a way, try to use these sorts of forces as proxies is another very, very important challenge for the Americans.
Let us look at another set of details. Since August 2011, there has been this great push for regime change in Syria, right? How many secretaries of state, American president has come on television, in public speech, get out of the way, people are coming, get out of the way, Bashar al-Assad. This is a big power, and their regional ally, Saudi Arabia, at one stage Turkey with them and Qatar with them. They have both fallen apart for another set of reasons, too complicated to explain in this one program. However, now that has not happened. Nur al-Maliki is extremely unpopular over the years. Americans have always had one or two pets whom they wanted as prime ministers. Iyad Alawi was one of them. He was tried out twice. Public endorsement was not available. It is sometimes these things have been done in more nearer home, in fact, in Afghanistan, if you like to be actually fair. It has been done there. And so they didn't succeed in getting Iyad Alawi. He won. Who? Recently, he won again. So they've had two slaps. One is Bashar al-Assad will not go away, and now this fellow has been endorsed by the people. Now, these double 1-2 on their chin, neither the Saudis nor the Americans can take. And therefore, now a new game plan is being worked out. Professor.
Well, I am somewhat puzzled here. Why I am puzzled? Because the Americans have probably realized at their own cost that they cannot manage this region the way they wanted to manage it. And that probably led them to the so-called pivot or whatever you call it, that we get out of these wars, we get out of Iraq, we get out of Afghanistan, go to the Pacific, which is a far more stable, and China is a bigger challenge. All this having done at the cost of American blood, American money, and American, I would say, status and image. Now, how stupid it would be if they really get bang deep into it again. And the local forces, I mean, even if through Saudis they want to use it, you were mentioning about ISIS, I am not very sure if the Saudis can really use them as puppets. Particularly after the recent successes which they have in terms of controlling oil resources, in terms of getting their own money sources, they are not a pawn in the hands of the Saudis. And if they are not a pawn in the hands of the Saudis, and if the Americans, the national level of confidence in America today is not very high to get on the adventures so serious and complex as they appear to be in this region. So that's what I said. I am really puzzled as to how they can really put the pieces of jigsaw together and make any of their games. And if they think they can do it, they're really truly stupid in that.